Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, ecoBiz Insights, Environmentally and Financially Responsible Service Delivery. I'm delighted to welcome today Nicole Price, who is one of our CCIQ ecoBiz Sustainability Consultants, and joining her this afternoon we have Andre Caspersz from Diabetes Queensland. So Nicole, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Manel, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. It's actually the fourth in a series of monthly webinars showcasing the achievements of some of our ecoBiz partners. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the ecoBiz program, when we refer to a partner, we're talking about businesses who've been able to reduce their energy and water consumption and waste generation by at least 10% in a 12-month period, and of course save money whilst doing so and reduce their impact on the environment. So today we're going to be hearing from Diabetes Queensland, who are actually ecoBiz champions. So they're designated as a champion for a number of reasons. Firstly, they've made reductions in their energy consumption and waste generation, and they've also demonstrated that they're at best practice in their water consumption. Now, Diabetes Queensland is a charity, and they've always run, therefore, quite a tight ship out of necessity, which is why, as you'll hear today, they've really had to look quite closely at their operation to find initiatives to help them save. But having done that, they've achieved a 70% reduction in their electricity consumption, a 6% reduction in their fuel consumption, and a 12% reduction in the amount of waste that they generate. Now, secondly, they are very diligent about monitoring so that they can better understand not only their levels of resource consumption and waste generation and their savings, but also, very importantly, when and why. So while I guess it's always possible for an organisation to target obvious wasteful behaviours, there does come a point when to really move forward, you need that greater level of understanding. And finally, what really makes them a champion in my mind, and what impresses me most about this organisation, is their absolute commitment to continuous improvement. So we've got a lot to discuss today. So it is with great pleasure that I now introduce Andre Caspersz, the Coordinator of Facilities at Diabetes Queensland. So welcome, Andre. To get started, would you like to firstly share with us a little bit about yourself and Diabetes Queensland?
Thank you, Nicole. Pleasure to be here. Probably just a little bit about myself. I've been with Diabetes Queensland now since 2008 and in the actual role of Facilities Coordinator since 2011. We started our organisation on its sustainability journey back in 2012 and commenced our involvement with ecoBiz in late 2014. As you mentioned previously, Diabetes Queensland is a charity and a membership organisation. And what we do is we provide education, advice, ongoing support and advocacy to Queenslanders living with diabetes and also those at risk. We have 200,000 registrants and 40,000 financial members, and we own a 3-storey building in Milton. We currently have 76 staff, but 91 in the review period, due to the number of programs that we run where staff actually come in on contract to actually run those programs for us. As a charity, it's obviously very important that we operate efficiently for our members. So we'll actually look at some actual figures later, but in terms of financial savings, we've been able to reduce our electricity costs by 10%, fuel by 16%, and our waste costs by 31%. I'd like to point out here that the electricity costs per kilowatt hour and the service fee are continuously increasing, so making savings despite reducing consumption by 17% is actually quite difficult. And even keeping costs the same or a little less each year is actually even more challenging. Secondly, Diabetes Queensland understands that society cannot continue to consume resources as it has done in the past without significantly impacting on the quality of life for future generations, and is thus committed to reducing its impact on the environment. We've therefore invested in generating our own renewable energy and efficiency measures that have reduced its generation of carbon emissions and waste of valuable resources. And finally, the key to Diabetes Queensland's philosophy is obviously good health. Wellbeing programs are closely aligned with sustainable choices, and it's important that the organisation walks the talk, so to say, and in the same way as it looks after its employees.
So thanks, Andre. And to get started, could you tell us a bit more about what Diabetes has done to reduce its electricity consumption, particularly in regards to reducing its peak demand costs? Now, for listeners who are not familiar with peak demand, it's an additional and often very significant charge on electricity bills, particularly for larger businesses, often those running large air conditioning units or particularly energy-hungry equipment. I personally have noticed while doing coaching sessions that many businesses are not even aware that they're paying for peak demand. And how the amount is actually calculated is based on the business's highest demand for electricity each month, and that's actually determined by a meter that reads how much the business is consuming every 5 to 30 minutes. So the business is then actually charged at that peak rate for the whole month, even if this peak was only reached for a few minutes during that month. So it's expensive, and obviously it's in the best interest of businesses to keep the peak low. As you can see in the top right-hand corner, it typically peaks midday when it's hottest and all the equipment is operating, or alternatively, it can happen at the start of the day when everyone arrives at work and all the equipment, the aircon, the computers and the lights and so forth are turned on and charged up all at once, causing a surge in the demand for power. And this is the case for you, Andre. So can you explain to us what you've done to attempt to bring your peak demand charge down?
Sure, Nicole. There's probably two key initiatives that we've actually undertaken. The first of those was installing both a 24 kilowatt and a 3 kilowatt solar photovoltaic units on the roof to generate renewable electricity, which has reduced our overall consumption. As the diagram shows, the maximum solar generation actually coincides for us during the day when all of our computers, our lights, air conditioning systems and so on are all operating. Whilst we don't actually get a rebate for our electricity from our electricity retailer for any solar power we feed back onto the grid, we're usually consuming most of what is generated anyway. So probably the second initiative that we looked at was really considering monitoring of our energy management, and that was actually done by our energy management consultants, an organisation called NUS Consulting. And what they basically did was have a look at all of our peaks, showing us that our main demand, or our demand peak, was actually occurring mainly in the morning around 7 a.m. And what this actually has led us to do is to actually look at staggering the startup times of the site's 5 air conditioning units each morning by 15 minutes to avoid this surge. And really what this has done is lowered our monthly peak demand and therefore reduced our costs by perhaps somewhere around $100 per month at this stage. We were also fortunate enough by being part of the forum to meet another ecoBiz organisation who have recently been able to come in and look at our systems just to make sure they're all working and working satisfactorily. So that's been great. Our electricity consumption patterns clearly show that the air conditioning is the major consumer of electricity and has thus been where we've actually focused much of our attention. We've replaced 60% of the site's aging air conditioning units with energy efficient models, and one of these units was actually initially undersized and also incorrectly wired, so it really wasn't working very well at all. We've repositioned temperature sensors, which were located before we actually bought the building, which really meant that when the building was reconfigured, when we took it over, again, there were efficiency issues that needed to be looked at. So those have now been redone and repositioned to give us a better spread of the actual air conditioning units themselves. We've also set our temperatures at 23 degrees centigrade. We service every unit each month, and also regularly check our ducting to make sure there's no air leaks. Probably another thing we did was back in 2012, we had a new roof installed in the building, which was of a lighter colour to obviously try and reflect as much heat as we could, and the ceiling itself is actually insulated. We also added blinds to the windows, which really avoid losing cool or warmed air as the case may be. We've also sought to replace our inefficient lighting, which included removing all of our 50-watt halogen downlight bulbs and replacing them with energy-efficient 6.5-watt LED bulbs. That made a huge difference. We've also replaced our twin 36-watt T8 fluorescent tubes with 14-watt T5 fluorescent tubes. And the reason we did that was at the time the LED technology was very expensive and not quite as advanced as it was today. We've also installed sensors in our meeting rooms to automatically turn off lighting when not in use. Our car park lighting is also on a timer, which normally turns off after 10 to 15 minutes. And usually all of our lighting on each floor is controlled by one switch, so it can all be turned off at the end of each day. As mentioned previously, we've also focused on reducing our own fleet fuel consumption, as that then reduced the impact of staff travel on the environment. So, for example, we've looked at purchasing more fuel-efficient vehicles. We went from Ford Falcons down to Mazda 2s, which made a huge difference. We've got 7 to 8 staff who ride to work, while around 30 staff actually travel to work on public transport. For the staff that actually ride to work, we've got 8 secure bike parking spaces and racks, and also have showers with end-of-trip facilities to help them out. So obviously when we originally had 91 staff, we also had a significant numbers of IT equipment, and for those what we've done is we ensure that our monitors are turned off by staff at the end of each day, and all of our photocopying machines and large photocopiers and printers, they usually run on energy saver mode to help.
And Andre, could you please now just explain how you then went on to calculate the impact of all these initiatives you've done to reduce your energy, and that both in terms of financial savings as well as environmental savings?
Certainly, Nicole. As part of the ecoBiz program, we compared our baseline electricity consumption for each of our 3 floors in the financial year 13 to 14, and with our consumption in 14 to 15, and found that we actually made a 17% reduction in our consumption. We also did the same for our fuel consumption, and while we made a 6% reduction, we thought we could do better. And in fact, following a reassessment 6 months later, we found we'd actually reduced our consumption by 13%. Combining our electricity and fuel reductions, therefore, has resulted in an overall 16% reduction in the charity's consumption on energy and a carbon emissions reduction, which is equivalent to actually taking 5 passenger vehicles off the road in a year. So the financial savings from our ecoBiz assessment equated to $4,166 or 10% electricity saving despite significant price increases, and $1,635 or 16.3% in our fuel savings.
And Andre, a significant part of Diabetes Queensland's charter is obviously education, which often equates to significant material and paper consumption and waste generation. So I know since joining the ecoBiz program you've focused heavily in this area. So can you now share with us some of the initiatives Diabetes Queensland has undertaken to reduce the volume of waste that they actually generate?
Certainly. In regards to training and meetings, we actually use PowerPoint for training staff and then test their competence on SurveyMonkey. We create virtual books before meetings which can be accessed during the meeting using an iPad, and that probably is mainly for our board meetings and board members. Staff that are not local can attend meetings using Skype. We've also got the minutes of our meetings, which are recorded using a smart pen and then distributed electronically. Moving towards cloud storage is another area, and our customer record maintenance system is now cloud-based. Currently we have a manual server and a backup unit. As part of moving towards a paperless office, we've replaced paper forms with electronic fillable PDF forms and timesheets, and that's been done by an organisation called Connex for us. Using reusable plates and cups is another area, because we have a lot of volunteers that come into the office from time to time, and commencing a user-pays system for stationery, which we started in July 2016. The business has considered using USBs for resource distribution for many of the organisation's members, but we needed to take into account that a lot of these people are actually elderly and may struggle with this sort of technology. There's also a government requirement, which means that we do have to send a lot of resources in mail, or via the mail I should say, which then means we do need to use a lot of paper to do so. However, to try and get around this, we purchase print paper from OfficeMax, which is a combination of virgin fibre from the Forest Stewardship Council certified forests, and or also recycled wood or fibre. Staff do require, I should say, a code to print, and any excess usage is usually followed up. They're also encouraged to use double-side printing, and we've noticed that there's been a considerable decline in single-side printing paper waste as a result of that. Also within the business, we've got a number of recycling and reuse programs. Commingle recycling for plastics and metals, for example. Cardboard, which is reused for outgoing mail and also recycled through Visy. Paper recycle, which is also recycled through Visy for us. Ink cartridges and mobile phones, which we do through Planet Arc. IT equipment, which is collected and recycled through BuyEquip. And we've also requested that suppliers using pallets who make deliveries to our building to ensure that they take the pallets back and recycle them, so we don't have any issues with storage as well. So once again, initial ecoBiz assessment comparing the financial years of 13 to 14 and 14 to 15 highlighted to us that we could do more to reduce our waste. After actively focusing on the initiatives in this area, our reassessment 6 months later showed a 12% reduction, which I think will only get better with time. Our latest assessment showed us a savings of $1,467, resulting in a reduction in our required bin collections. That's a 31% reduction in waste collection costs for our organisation.
So, Andre, like many offices, your water consumption is actually quite small, but by measuring your consumption, you've actually been able to use the self-assessment neighbours rating calculator, which is publicly available online, to assess how your water consumption actually compares to other offices in Brisbane. So in this case, you use the neighbours water tool, but also for the listeners, there's tools there for energy, waste and indoor environments, which can be used for any existing building or tenancies for commercial offices, shopping centres, hotels and homes. So of course, this is a self-assessment tool. So if you actually wanted to get an accredited rating, you would be required to hire an accredited assessor. But in this case, Diabetes did the self-assessment and came up with 4 stars, which equates to being a good performer. So, Andre, how does Diabetes Queensland keep their water consumption to a minimum? So, and I understand this is one of the areas where you wish to do more work in the future.
Sure, Nicole. We encourage staff to ride their bikes to work, for example, and provide showers which around 5 to 10 staff per day use. This, of course, is one of those environmental trade-offs, unfortunately, which we do to try to encourage staff to try and take short showers and have water-efficient shower roses. We also have water-efficient cold water only hand basin taps and dual flush toilets, and all of our washing up is usually undertaken in 2 dishwashers, which can be cycled so they wash only when full.
Thanks so much, Andre. It's now time for our Q&A session. So we have had a couple of questions come through. So Andre, the first one we've had is, how have you achieved staff engagement? So obviously, you know, you said you're working with 91 staff and there's a few volunteers that float in and out. What's the best strategy, and how have your team engaged the staff to get on board with these initiatives?
Thanks, Manel. I think the main thing is we've tried to keep people abreast of what we're actually achieving. So we do publish our results on a regular basis to staff. We also try and run little competitions every now and again to keep people going, to keep people's interest. And I think really try to maintain the momentum, and I think that's the biggest issue for us.
Great, thanks so much. And the next one we have, Andre, how did you start it all? What convinced you to start, and where were you looking to get that initial information as well?
I think the main areas, and I suppose the reason behind it, was because we're a charitable organisation, we do need to maximise whatever use we have of our funds that come in. And I guess we're always looking for ways and means of improving that and reducing costs and so on. So in my case, back in 2012, we had the opportunity to attend a sustainability seminar down in Melbourne, which we did attend, and came up with quite a number of interesting initiatives for looking at what we could do, which we then brought back and then progressively implemented as funds became available.
And Andre, once you were inspired, I guess, by this meeting that you went to, how did you then take all those ideas and actually put them through to fruition?
I think the problem when you're dealing with anything with new technology is trying to make sure that the information that you're given, that the people that you're talking to, have the necessary backup and so forth to perform with whatever it is that they say they're going to do. So there's a couple of different ways we did that. I guess initially with product that we purchased, for example, like our lighting and so on, we did follow up with customers that had that sort of work done previously, and we contacted them and tried to get a bit of a handle on how the organisations did what they did and how successful they were. And also I think moving forward, we found with our partnership with CCIQ and the ecoBiz program, that provide us a lot of information and a lot of assistance, particularly with looking at the monitoring process, trying to work out how our costs were going, what gains we were making, and so forth. And that certainly helped us a great deal.
And just another question that we've had come through, Andre. What's the payback period for the solar panels that you installed? Can you briefly talk us through that?
In our case, we were fortunate to actually have grant funding for our solar panels. And because of that, we were fortunate enough to have a repayment basically straight away. So it's really been quite an efficient process for us over time, yes.
Like you said in your webinar, Andre, you've had a double benefit really, because A, you've reduced your consumption, but B, it's really helped to reduce your peak demand as well. So I'm assuming that would also reduce your payback period as well.
Most definitely, and I think particularly with the peak demand, I guess that's what we're concentrating on now, because obviously with the costs going up on a regular basis, as they do every July, over a period of time, that certainly would help as well, because the bigger the peak demand, the more you're actually going to pay. So obviously our solar power certainly kicks in and does quite a bit for that.
Great. And one last question that we have time for. How do you, Andre, find the time to do all of this work rather than just keeping up to the day-to-day operations? How are you making the time for this?
Now that's an interesting question. The thing is, I suppose, working for a charitable organisation, you learn to become a bit of a jack of all trades in a lot of ways. So you tend to have to manage your time quite well and time manage yourself. And I guess the other side of the coin too is you do normally have a lot of people who are willing to pitch in and help because that's the general culture of the organisation. So overall, it gives me the time I need then to do what I need to do.
Thanks, Andre, for handling all those questions. As I mentioned at the start of the webinar, CCIQ ecoBiz will be discussing a new topic each month to save your business money and increase efficiencies. So the next upcoming November topic is about making sense of waste. And in the meantime, please tune in to tomorrow's workshop where Don Parry will be talking with Adrian Just from Archaeology Architects. Now, they're both very knowledgeable and experienced and entertaining speakers, so make sure you don't miss that. Thank you, Andre, for joining us today and sharing your inspiring story with us. I think you've really demonstrated the benefits of continually striving to improve, and we wish Diabetes all the best in the future with your endeavours.
Thank you, Nicole. Pleasure to be here.
And we'd love to hear from you here at CCIQ ecoBiz. If you've got any more questions or you'd like to know more about the program, please contact. Good afternoon, everybody.